Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Mr. Mahmoud Helmi from Al-Andalus School. Today, inshallah, we will start with a new unit from New Hello, Unit 2, Books and Reading. The objectives of this unit are grammar. We will learn about comparatives and superlative, few, fewer, the fewest, the little, less, the least. Reading, we will have a conversation about reading. Listening, we will have a listening to a discussion about story. Speaking, discussing a story. Writing a book review. Here, there are some warm-up questions. When and where do you read? We usually read in our free time or when we have spare time. What kind of things do you enjoy reading? I think teenagers enjoy reading detective stories, science fiction stories, and adventure stories. Okay, now we will read the conversation. What do you think a book review is? A book review is a summary or some information you may have about the book. Before you read a book, you may have a review about the details, about the summary, about the topic or the subject matter of the book you are going to read. Here we will have the conversation. Listen carefully. Tariq, I have some time before my next lesson. Let's choose a book to read. Umar, there are lots of historical stories here, but there are few detective stories. Tariq, that's because detective stories are more popular, aren't they? People like trying to solve the problems before the detective. People have less interest in historical stories. Umar, detective stories are too long. I have little time to read this year because I have more schoolwork. So I want a book with fewer pages than a detective story. Tariq, this book had the fewest number of pages and will take you the least amount of time to read. Tariq, Umar, Tariq, that book is about traveling, isn't it? True, this book is good. Its title is 10 Facts About the World. I read a review of that book. It said it was very good. I'll read that. This is the conversation between Tariq and Umar. Now we will see the question. What does Tariq want to do before his next lesson? Okay, he wants to do what? Tariq wants to choose a book to read. Why does Tariq say that detective stories are more popular than historical stories? Of course, because they are more popular. Okay, people like trying to solve the problems before the detective. Uh, what kind what kind of book does Tariq recommend to Umar? He recommended Science, 10 Facts About the World. How does Umar know that 10 Facts About the World is a good book? Because he read the review about that book. It said it was a very good book. Okay, now we will go to the second part of our lesson today, that is grammar. Complete the sentences with these words from the article. Our grammatical rule today is about comparison. We will learn about comparatives and superlatives for comparison. But first we will do this exercise and then we will talk about the grammatical rule of that unit. Complete the sentences with these words from the article. There are lots of historical stories in this library, but there are few detective stories. We know that few, fewer, the fewest are used with countable nouns. Less, little, least are used with uncountable nouns. And we say that countable nouns are the nouns that we can add s to them, like a chair, chairs, room, rooms, an apple, five apples, onions, trains, cars. These are countable nouns because we count them. We also add the plural s at the end of the noun. Okay, but uncountable nouns, that these are the nouns that we can't add plural s to them. Like what? Like coffee, like air, like milk, tea, oil, butter, furniture, and so on. Let's look at these. There are lots of historical stories in the library, but there are few detective stories. People have space interest in historical stories. People have, yes, less interest in historical stories. Interest here is an abstract noun, it is uncountable noun, so we used less. People have less interest in historical stories. I have little time to read this year because I have more schoolwork. Time is, as an abstract noun, is uncountable. But if we talk about time as I met Ali so many times, so here this is countable noun. But if we talk about time as an abstract noun, okay, it is uncountable. So we used here, I have less time to read this year because I have more schoolwork. I want a book with space pages. Let's look at the noun after the space. It's pages. Pages is countable noun. So, and this is the comparison. So we use fewer. I want a book with fewer pages than a detective story. This book has the fewest number of pages. This is superlative. Yes, this book has the fewest number of pages and will take you the least amount of time. Here, the first part of that sentence, number five, the first part is countable, it's fewest number of pages. The second part is uncountable, the least amount of time to read. Okay, this is the exercise before we start explaining the grammatical rule of that unit. Using comparatives and superlatives for comparison. Few, fewer, the fewest. Little, less, the least. We use these words for comparison, and we said that comparison when we compare between two things. Okay, for example, when I say class 4A has fewer students than class 4B, class 4A has fewer students than class 4B, but class 4C has the fewest number of students. Class 4C has the fewest number of students or has the fewest students. Okay, so we use these words for comparison. We use few, fewer, the fewest with countable nouns. Look at that example. Few students read magazines. Few students read magazines. Okay. We use little, less, the least with uncountable nouns. For example, I have little money. I have a little money. Okay. But my sister has less money than me. Okay. But Ali had the least money. Okay. Also another example, I have a little juice in my bottle. My sister has less juice than me. Ahmed has the least juice in his bottle. Okay, so we use little, less, the least with uncountable nouns. And I told you before that uncountable nouns are the nouns that we don't add plural s at the end of the noun. For example, butter, oil, milk, tea, juice, orange juice, apple juice, furniture, okay, coffee. The comparative forms are fewer and less. We use fewer with countable, less with uncountable. Okay. I have got fewer books than you. The comparison here between two. You've got less meat than I have. You've got less meat than I have. Meat here is an uncountable noun. The superlative forms are the fewest and the least. When I say the fewest number for class 4C had the fewest student. Class 4 has the fewest students. Okay. Um, the streets, the fewest number of cars we see on Fridays because this is a holiday. That bottle has the least water. That bottle has the least water. Okay. Complete these sentences with correct form of few or little. Number one is done for you. There are fewer than 20 people on the bus today. There are fewer than 20 people on the bus today. Now, let's do exercise. Do sentence number 2, 3, 4, and 5. Look at this, please. Yes. Number 2, the fewest number of tourists visits the museum early in the morning. The fewest number of tourists visits the museum early in the morning. Students have often less sleep during school time than during the holidays. The Antarctic is the place in the world that has the least rain. The least rain, uncountable noun. Few people think that English is not a useful language. Few people think that English is not a useful language. Let's move to item 3. Okay, number 3, ask and answer. Look at the bubbles. This is a dialogue between two boys. The first boy said, What is the least time you have spent waiting for a bus? The other boy answered, I waited 30 seconds for a bus last week. That's a very short time, of course. Which has fewer legs, a horse or a spider? So you can say a spider, or sorry, a horse has fewer legs than a spider. Which day of the week do you think had the fewest number of cars on the road and why? I think Saturday morning has the fewest number of cars on the road because it's a holiday. On Mondays, do you spend less time at home or at school? It varies. Okay, so some students may say, on Mondays, I spend less time at home. Or some others may say, on Monday, I spend more time at home. Okay, or some other boys may say, on my day, Mondays, I spend less time at school. When is the driest time of the year in Egypt? I think you can say August is the driest time of the year in Egypt. This is also a comparison. Okay, now let's go to the second part of our lesson, that is workbook. Yes, Here, complete the sentences. We will use words from that book's detective historical review title. The first one is done for you. This is a historical story about the pharaohs in ancient Egypt. This is a historical story about the pharaohs in ancient Egypt. Number two, A. Space helps the police in their work. Detective review title. Of course, the right answer is detective. Okay. The space of the book you are using is New Hello. Of course, the title of the book. Number four, I want to see that film because the review in the newspaper says that it's very exciting. So here are the answers. The first one, number two, detective. Number three, title. Number four, review. Okay, now to the second exercise, exercise number two. Read the correct Read and correct the mistakes in these sentences. The first one is done for you. There are least English cars than Korean cars in Egypt. Look at the word least English cars. Of course, cars here is countable noun, so we can't use least with countable nouns. We have to use few, and this is comparison, so we have to use fewer. Comparative, we use fewer. If it is superlative, we use the fewest. There are fewer English cars than Korean cars in Egypt. First, you find the mistake, then you try to correct it. 1.6 liters is the fewest amount of water that women should drink every year. Okay, here the right answer. Okay, yes, 1.6 is the least amount of water. Least. The right answer here, you should say 1.6 liters is the least amount of water that women should drink every day. There are very less people who live in the number there are less people who live in the west of Egypt. Here, less is not matching with people. People is countable noun, so we should use few. There are very few people who live in the west of Egypt. Number four, the tour guide said that 10 is the less number of tourists she can take on the boat trip. Okay, so the right answer should be the tour guide said that 10 is the least number of tourists she can take on the trip. Number five, the hotel was noisy, so they had few sleep last night. Few is not matched, okay, with sleep because sleep is uncountable, so we should use little. The hotel was noisy, so they had little sleep last night. We very little people have traveled to the deepest parts of the sea. Very little people have traveled to the deepest parts of the sea. Of course, little is not matched with people because people is countable, so we should use very few people. Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, the last one, which weighs the least? Air, water, or soil? Of course, air. Which weighs the least? Air, water, or soil? Of course, air. What is the least time you have spent doing your homework? Okay, it varies. You can say, what is the least time you have spent doing your homework? Okay, it could be 30 minutes, 1 hour, or something like this. Do few tourists visit your area, or do many tourists visit it, or do many tourists visit it? The answers here varies, and it depends on your answer, and it depends on the area or the governorate you are living. For example, if you are living in Aswan, in Luxor, in Alexandria, you will say that many tourists visit my town. That's all what we can say about this today. I wish you have enjoyed my session. Okay, our main subject was about Unit 2, New Hello, books and reading. I hope that you have enjoyed my lesson and you have understood the comparison. Till we meet again, I wish you the best of luck. Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmoud from Al Andalus School. Thank you and bye bye.